Hey guys, welcome to Phoenix, Arizona, and Audi flew me out here to test drive that. Yes, that's the brand new Audi RS5. And yesterday I posted a video to TFL Now asking for your input. What questions do you want to know about this new Audi? And you guys came through and asked a lot of great questions. And luckily, Anthony Garbus, the product manager for that car, has become a friend of mine. So coming up right now, we're going to answer your questions. Yesterday I did a video and I asked our viewers to submit questions that they were most curious about the brand new RS5. So I'm going to read you the questions, people who submitted them, and you answer them.
Sounds good.
All right, so first question, Treats on the Streets wants to know, how does launch control work and how fast will it go from 0 to 60?
So to do launch control in an Audi is pretty much the same process across the board. You push the ESC button once, it goes into sport mode. You put the transmission into sport, so move the selector lever back down past D, and then it'll say sport. You left foot brake. On this car, it'll rev to about 3,000, 3,500, and it's an automatic, so it's just loading the torque converter. And then let go of the brake, keep the throttle mashed, and you'll hit 0 to 60 in 3.7 seconds.
So how does launch control work? It's very simple. All you do is click the traction control once, put it in sport mode, mash the brake, mash the throttle, and let go of the brake. Oh my God, it jumped out. Oh, that's 60. Did you time that? According to Audi, that is exactly 3.7 seconds, which is yeah, fast. I got tunnel vision there. You know, this car really is a Mustang with all-wheel drive for the road. There's a lot of weight with the engine over the front wheels. There's a lot of power. And there's a lot of attitude with those big oval exhausts. Keep in mind that every RS model in the Audi lineup now has oval exhausts. All right, this next question is from Roman Micah. Why'd you switch from an 8-cylinder to a 6 turbo?
Sure.
Twin turbo.
So it's a bi-turbo 6. So actually, let's pop this off.
Yeah.
Well, this is going to be a little hot. So hiding here, you can see the 2 turbos, and then the catalyst sitting right behind them as well. It's also heritage, right? It goes back to the original RS4, which is 6-cylinder and bi-turbo. And so you also get reduced weight. So it saved 30 kilograms, about 66 pounds from the front axle by going from a 6-cylinder to a bi-turbo, or excuse me, from 8-cylinder to bi-turbo 6. And also, now we're making much more torque, about 126 pound-feet more. So we're 443, and that's at 1900 RPM. Where before you had to rev to about 4,000 to get into the peak torque curve on the V8. So that's what really gets you going and moving so quickly, and why we hit 0 to 60 in only 3.7 seconds.
Which is freaking fast.
It is the fastest in its class. It's faster than an M4, it's faster than a C63 and a C63S.
And now I'm gonna put it in dynamic mode. And those baffles open. Oh yeah. Tim Shaw is interested in the different tire options on the car, and he wants to know if these 20s actually ride rough. That's the word.
Rough. Well, anytime you go to a lower sidewall, you're going to have a little bit more firmness feeling from the road. Right here, every wheel that you get on an RS model is forged. So you can have 19-inch wheels, which come with 265 width tires. And those are 19 by 9, those are about 22.5 pounds. These forged 20-inch, also 20 by 9, but you gain 10 millimeters of width on the tire, so you go to 275. And then there's also another option where you can get milled cut forged wheels, which are available on the RS5, and that drops you about 26.5 pounds.
And these are hand cooked, right?
These tires are hand cooked, like Audi specific hand cooks. Yep. We also have a Continental, and then a little bit later we'll have a Pirelli coming in as well. You always have about 3 tire manufacturers.
What does Audi specific mean?
So you see here where it says AO?
Yeah, right there.
So you'll see this on every Audi. It'll be AO for all the new ones. Some of the older ones, the Audi Sport models will say RO1. And these are specific development and compounds and construction of the tires that we work with the manufacturers to make. And so you can buy, you know, a tire that looks similar to this and doesn't have AO marking and be a totally different tire.
Now keep in mind that this Audi has low profile tires, and as low profile tires go, they give you a lot of grip, which is good for track days, but they also tend to make for a harsh ride. Here in Arizona, of course, none of the roads are especially bad, so it's hard to judge just how harsh the ride becomes with the low profile tires, but Audi does say that with this dry select mode, I can select from basically comfort mode to automatic to dynamic to individual mode. And those 4 different modes dramatically change the character of the car. So you can tell the difference between, say, comfort mode and dynamic mode. And let's put it into dynamic mode, which is the one where you have the least amount of suspension compliance. Basically track mode changes the exhaust note, changes the way that the steering firms up, changes your shift points, makes the car sound like a Formula 1 car, and makes it a little bit harsher on the road, but not too bad. And I have to agree that Audi is right about the fact that if I change this mode back to comfort, it completely changes the character of the car. It's much more relaxed, it's much more of a grand tour versus a car that's fit for a track day. Reg Parks wants to know, how does the sound enhancement work?
Sound enhancement. So there's 2 things. One, this car has sport exhaust.
Yep.
So it has a different center silencer, which changes the tone and gives a little bit more of a mechanical sound to the exhaust.
And now I'm going to put it in dynamic mode. And those baffles open. Oh yeah.
And then on the RS5, under 3,000 RPM, there's a diaphragm that sits at the base of the firewall by the windshield that then takes the engine noise and essentially amplifies it a little bit to give you some more noise, and uses the windshield essentially like a speaker.
So it's basically like a windshield speaker, but it's only under 3,000, right?
Yeah, under 3,000 to give the Turbo 6 a little bit more grunt. And it's not that we're pumping any sound into the speakers of the car or anything. It's just amplifying the engine noise using the diaphragm at the base of the windshield.
Douglas Milowski, he wants to know, why can't I get a manual? Why only an 8-speed automatic?
Well, this whole segment, really, when you look at it, is automatic. And the performance car segment, R8, RS3, TTRS now, only automatic. You get better numbers, you get better acceleration and performance and when you do it with an automatic. And so the manual is a little bit of your limitation. I mean, I would love a manual, but unfortunately it's the minority of people who would actually buy one.
Yeah, I think that's the real issue, right? I mean,
it is.
The take rate on manuals is less than 10% in America.
It's like 5. Yeah. I mean, have a manual on the A4 and on the A5 coupe, and they're single digits. Yeah. And it's just the market's not there for them anymore.
Yeah, so people want them, but they don't buy
so
them.
One fact I like to say, because we got a lot with the R8 why there was no manual. Once we introduced the S-Tronic for the R8, 90% of people are taking the S-Tronic and 10% are taking the manual. And that's in an R8. So that kind of set the whole tone for the rest of the segment, rest of the performance cars.
If you were to ask me what my favorite part of this car is, it would have to be the configurable display. Audi does a really great job in making a display that not only gives you map, tachometer, speed, and of course, this is really cool, power and torque numbers. So I'm only using 2% of its available power. Let's see what happens when I floor it. Oh yeah, I go up to about 100 and I quickly exceed the speed limit. But I do love the fact that all that is right in front of me, easily readable, very easy to use when you're on the road, and certainly very easy to use when you're on the track. And I think Audi does one of the best jobs in the biz in making a configurable digital display pleasing and yet understandable and user-friendly. All right, so M. Sears Garage wants to know, is this more of a GT or more of a sports car?
It leans more towards GT than sports car. So if you really want to go like sports car, obviously R8, and also TTRS is much more on the R8 side of things. But the whole two-door coupe, the A5 family R5, this is really a GT, and it's good because it gives you the comfort to be able to drive the car every day, that you would want to drive this car every day. Whereas if you're in something that's really just sports car, will beat you up and it's not as comfortable, it's something that doesn't really fit the character of this vehicle.
All right. Elisa May Marie wants to know, how does the weight compare to an S5?
Compared to an S5, you gain a little bit of weight on this car from the heavy equipment level that's on it. So they're very well equipped in RS5, and it's about 100 pounds roughly.
All right, and then is it a liftback, hatchback, or standard trunk?
It is a standard trunk. So you see a nice slope to it, but then you have a regular trunk here.
While a standard trunk may not be very roomy, this car does have folding seats, So you can get a 40-60 split by actually folding the seats down, which gives you a lot of room, perhaps even enough room to put a pair of skis in here or a mountain bike if you take the wheels off. And the most interesting question, I think, comes from Shahab. He wants to know if we can do a walk through the digital dash. So let's sit down.
Sure, let's take a look at this. This is the same virtual cockpit that you'll see in an A4, A5, S4, S5. But every time you go up the model, so you go from A4 to S4 or A5 to S5, you get a couple more features. You get this sport display mode, right? So looking at it right here, you have the sport display mode where you have this centrally mounted tachometer. RS cars get additional gauges, which you can see here on the right. It's the telemetry for the motor, right? So horsepower and torque. And then you also have a G meter you can put up. And if you get the dynamic package, which comes with ceramic brakes, you also get direct tire pressure monitoring. And then it'll bring up a display that tells you individual pressure and temperature of each tire, which is very important because when you have this kind of power, you want to know that your tires are up to temperature before you start pushing the car.
And obviously you can configure the display. Kind of show me how to do that.
So let's go layout.
Yeah.
So you can switch from the sport layout to the classic layout. And this is what you'd expect in a normal car, right? Just 2 gauges. So it takes about 5 seconds or so, and then it'll reload the layout. And then with this, you only have one display in the center that you can show.
Okay.
So, I mean, look, you drove 5 hours, 23 miles per gallon.
Which is respectable for a car that puts out.
It's very respectable.
Well,
yeah, 444, yeah, and 443 pound-feet of torque.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of, and that's also a benefit of the 6-cylinder. And I mean, in this segment, it's not as much of a big deal, but we do have class-leading fuel economy.
All right, so let's say you want like torque and horsepower and Google Maps on one side, and torque and horsepower on the other. How would you do that?
So if you want to do, you have to go back to the sport mode if you want something other than like on the left and right. Yeah. So in classic, then you also have, you know, the typical infotainment mode where you put the big map up in the center, right? So then it's just in the center. You shrink the gauges. If you want to go back to sport mode, you go to layout, you switch it back to sport layout.
Takes a second.
It'll take about 5 seconds to do the switch over, and maybe a little less. Okay, and so then you can have your maps over here on this side, and it's through Google. It's Google Earth. Yeah, you can zoom in and zoom out, and then on the right, you can determine what you want on the right side of the layout by going to additional display. You can choose your like date and time, consumption, short-term memory, long-term memory, or you can put the G meter up. And the G meter, when you're stocked, will show you the max that you've done in any one of the axes.
Yeah, you can kind of see it just a little bit.
I mean,
there,
we didn't do much. They were telling me earlier when the guys did 1.2 Gs of acceleration and 1.2 Gs in braking.
So even though we've got 20s, and even though we have ceramic brakes, this car is still a very comfortable long-distance cruiser that will eat up miles and get you a ticket like that, because yeah, you will go very quickly from point A to point B in comfort, style, and in a very green Audi. Do you like this green color, by the way? It's called Sonoma Green, and it is a color that Audi is using to help highlight the uniqueness of this vehicle, and it certainly is very unique. Now, a lot of your competitors are actually doing complete virtual buttons, right? Jaguar just went to that. Porsche's gone to that.
Porsche with the virtual buttons.
Yeah, are you guys going to go to that, or are you going to keep the hard buttons?
You see the 2-screen MMI setup in the new A8 and A7. And so the new generation of cars have that same setup.
Yeah, so it's kind of a thing in the industry now.
Yeah, people expect touchscreens, right? It's just something they expect from the phones, that touchscreens seem to make sense. I very much like the MMI knob, but after playing with the new setup for a while in a couple of cars, it's very intuitive, and it's just the next generation that you'd expect.
You know, this is my softball question, so I'm going to ask it. What's your favorite feature of this car?
My favorite feature of this car? I wanted to call it a feature. It's just the surge of power you get when you floor this thing in third gear, and it just goes. And hopefully you all stayed out of trouble today.
I stayed out of trouble. You know, I gotta tell you, my kind of thinking about this car was, it's kind of, if the Germans decided to make an all-wheel drive Mustang, this would be the vehicle that they would make. It feels very similar to that.
It's a little bit subtle. in the amount of performance that it has, but it's got the looks for it. I mean, my favorite feature is when you're behind someone and you see the wide body on the back of this car. Looks fantastic.
And it is a little bit wider than a regular
It
one,
is.
right?
So you're 15 millimeters wider on each fender, front and rear, and then your track increased by 11 millimeters in the front and 20 millimeters in the rear. And that's both from offset of the wheels, and also the hubs are also large and strengthened for the RS5.
And you've got not only all-wheel drive, but you can route, what, up to like 70% of the power either forward, 85%
Yeah, so it'll go
backward?
70 to the front, 85 to the rear, and then you have the sport differential, which will then transfer whatever rearward torque to either the left or right side up to 100%.
So you can go front, back, left, right.
Yeah. So if you're in a turn, also with the specific tuning on the RS5 in dynamic mode, it'll let you slide the back out a bit more. It'll overdrive that outside wheel, really push you a bit.
So it gives you more of a kind of a rear wheel.
Yeah,
drive.
and so you have the benefit of dynamics of rear-wheel drive and control of all-wheel drive, and that is the fastest way around a turn, right? When you're out there sliding around, drifting, you're not going the fastest way possible.
And out of like the major competitors, right? The AMG
M4.
C63,
Yep.
the M4. This is the only one that actually has all-wheel drive.
Correct. So it's also a real Four Seasons car.
All right, and of course the numbers are important. People are going to care about them. It starts at about 70, right?
Yeah, at 69.9 to start.
And then if you load it all up, another 20K. Is that fair?
The green cars had every option. Yeah, you're about 20K more.
So 90K.
Yep.
And then when
And this one's sitting at like 81.
and when will it become available?
You should see it in about another month or so.
All right.
In the spring.
All right, and then there's something unusual about the tire pressure monitors, right? When you get the ceramic brakes, they also give you the tire temperature.
Yep, so it's temperature and pressure.
And that's pretty cool.
And one thing also to note is that we have a spare tire in this car as well.
A full spare tire.
I mean, it's a
space saver, but
it's a space saver, but it's full.
But it's not a can of like
no, it is not like a can of hopes and dreams, right? No, it's a real wheel, and that's something that we do across the entire A485 Q5 family. And you actually have a separate spare tire if you get the ceramic brakes, because you need them to clear the caliper. So we have two different spare tires and wheels for this car.
Now, on these launches, you guys have a lot of different colors, and you kind of take the most, let's call them interesting ones.
I take a lot of pride in my green cars.
Yeah, so tell me about the green and tell me about this color.
So this color is Nardo Gray, which is an RS specific color. We've had it for a bit. It's got a great cult following. The RS5 comes in Sonoma Green, which is exclusive to the RS5, and I love it. It's a gorgeous kind of, sometimes it's a deep green, and in the sun it goes a little bit olive green. It's it's an awesome color, quite unique, and I think it's polarizing though. You love it or hate it, but so far from what I've heard, people seem to love it. So hopefully I'll see a lot of green RS5s on the road near me, and it'll make me happy.
Well, there you have it, guys. Thank you for asking some thoughtful and smart questions, and hopefully you got thoughtful and smart answers. As always, this is Roman reporting for the Fastlane Car, and check out tflcar.com for more news, views, and of course, your questions answered Audi RS5 reviews. See you guys next time. Ciao.